Pardon me. By the way, my name is Trey Burley.
Trey, nice to
Yes.
meet you.
Nice
Jarrod
to meet you.
Shustermann here.
Sofia Lapuente.
Sofia Lapuente, nice to meet you. And you guys are the co-authors of Retro.
Yes, we are.
So
Yeah.
how does a co-author thing work? Do you work on certain paragraphs or certain chapters? How does that work when you're working as a team?
Yeah, that's a really good question because, I mean, with all different authors, it's totally different. But the way we work is we plan everything. You know, we are partners in every sense of the word. So I have learned that communication is the most important thing. So we communicate everything. So the point of like what we're going to do at the end, how it's going to happen in the beginning, what the characters are going to be like, all the things about them, we learn so much. And then, you know, we'll take passes, we'll write different things, but we always edit what the other person writes. So it's like super
And always in
embedded.
the same day. So the most we work alone is one day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we go and we put together again the thing.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll never go like more than 20 pages without making sure she checks it,
Really?
what I've done, or less, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Do you ever have kind of, I'll call them polite disagreements on what direction a character should go or is going?
Yeah, polite and non-polite.
Yeah, we have we have them all. I mean, we have a rule though, and it doesn't matter how polite or non-polite it gets.
Yeah.
It's like if both of us don't say yes, then the answer is no. And the one person doesn't dig their heels in and go, okay, well, I'm going to prove to you why this is right. We try it a little bit, but
once in a while it works.
And once in a while it works, you know. But like most of the time, it's we got to come up with a new solution, and maybe it kind of has remnants of my solution plus hers, and we mix it and we make it work.
Or sometimes you just need to go completely different, and you find one option that at the beginning we never, you know, we didn't think about it, but that pushed you to find another solution that is like, oh, okay, that's cool. That works for both, and it's totally different.
So I'll say also, let me actually close the window here while we do that. Hang on. So in that vein, completely different. When I read Retro, I didn't know anything about the book prior to it. I didn't read the book's jacket. I just kind of jumped right into it.
Yeah.
And it jumps between genres to an extent, because when you first start reading it, you're like, oh, this is it's a horror book. I'm not sure what it is. Someone's being held captive. How would you describe, and now that I've read it, I get the totality of the book. How would you describe Retro to those who aren't familiar with it?
You know, I would say that it's a fun thriller with the right amount of humor and the right amount of chili pepper spice. You know, we try to mix genres, and it's something that we see is really kind of an evolution that's happening in YA literature. It's like all these different genres are coming together, and we wanted to do it in a fun way that was just addicting, right? Like that you can't stop reading. That was the goal.
Yeah. But a reason why we wanted to do that, one of the reasons is like because we come from screenwriting. And I feel like on TV and movies is more common to mix genres. Like right now, Wednesday, everyone is watching the Netflix show Wednesday.
Yeah.
And Wednesday is horror comedy. Actually, that's how it says in Netflix. And now it's like
mystery, horror comedy mystery.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And you watch it and you're like, this is amazing. It's not it's crazy, but it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So because we came from screenplay, we were like, okay, we can do that in a book. It's not that crazy, but turns to be that at the beginning, the publishers were like, okay, where are you going with all this? Because we were like, fun thriller, we have it really clear in our mind, but we needed to explain it. And then when they read it, it's like, nah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I've got a term that I use sometimes in my reviews called age-appropriate horror or age-appropriate dread. And Retro is very middle school to high school, age-appropriate action, but also mystery. And
adventure. They say a lot of adventure too.
Yeah, a lot of adventure. And it's not at all, actually, I say very sarcastically, it is very laced with common events and very strong possible situations for middle school or high school kids because it's got its thumb right on social media.
Yeah. I mean, we all know what is social media nowadays. Like, even if you don't have, you are affected by that. So that's what our first book, we wanted to be something that everyone can relate in different ways, but we had clear we wanted to talk about it. And I think that some people think that I've been hearing that the end is sci-fi. Some people say that, but I always say like everything, part of what, I don't want to say what is the end, but everything about Limbo and the social media company and everything started because I was working in Google years ago.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So there is things that look way more fiction than what they are.
Yeah, we exaggerated truths, but we exaggerated truths. You know, so it's like truth is stranger than fiction sometimes.
But it has fingerprints in reality, which is a little scary.
Yeah. That's why we had to write it.
You mentioned the MacGuffin, and Limbo, without giving too much away, Limbo is the fictional company in the book that is basically a social media internet type company, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like an Instagram or a TikTok.
Okay.
Yeah.
The kids want to engage in that. Okay.
Yeah.
And the cast in Retro, very diverse.
Yeah.
But they're all very much aligned with The Breakfast Club, if you've seen that movie from the 80s, where they all identify with the genre.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
They identify very faithfully.
They're all kind of like their own outcasts, right? You know, so one might call this one the loner, one might call themselves, I'm the weird one. I mean, everybody has their thing. And we learned that all of those things that some people might marginalize them for become their strengths. That's what kind of brings them together.
Very true. And the flow of the book, I mentioned to it a little bit. It starts with the story as it's happened a bit down the road. So you're saying, why is this person in this predicament? Okay. But then you have to go back in time to figure out why they're in that spot. And then you realize why they're there, and maybe they'll get out, maybe they won't. Along the way, though, the chapters are introduced, or I guess premised, with a song, a playlist of sorts.
Yes.
Now, why did you want to do that? Why did you start it out with songs and a playlist type sort?
Well, you know, I think one of the main things when it came to just creating this book in general was like, we realized if we're writing a book that's kind of about Limbo, about TikTok, about Instagram, that we need to really be on the pulse of the attention span of the readers. And readers and everybody these days is 8.25. So we implemented all of these things from all these different ways of writing and different ways of trying to, you know, get
short
the audience.
chapters.
Short chapters, songs. We wanted to make it immersive. We wanted to make it like
a whole experience.
Yeah, like a cake, and you just eat it in one day.
Yeah.
Whether it was your favorite book or not, we want you to finish it, you know? Like
yeah.
That's actually a great point, because the chapters, that you want to say bite size, because that I don't like the way that sounds, but the chapters are very approachable. It's a good length for those middle school and high school readers that don't want to read, but will get sucked in because it's relevant to what they're experiencing.
Yeah,
exactly. We, you know, because for me, I was kind of like a reluctant reader. I mean, my dad, he's an author. He's been around for a while. He's done a lot of great books, and everyone thought that I was going to be, you know, really bookish. Really, I was like, no, I'm the opposite. I went outside. I was scraping my knee. I was not reading. I was not doing my homework, and eventually, you know, I found my path to YA literature. And I was like, I want to write a book for those kids who just, or those teenagers or whoever, even adults, but like people who just want to pick something up and just enjoy it and just devour it and get hooked.
Yep.
Oh, like a beach read. And I like that term, because like it's something you could pick up on the beach and read it. And as a teacher, I can totally identify with the fact that a lot of kids, mainly boys, don't want to read. They're reluctant readers.
Yeah. Their heads elsewhere. House in other places.
It's in the clouds. It's on the soccer field. Who knows where it is? But it's good that there's a book there. So your background, you've come from, your father is a writer.
Yes.
But you've written books prior to this. How does this book, Retro, how does it tie in? I know it's not a sequel, but does it have any common threads to previous releases that you're further exploring?
You know, I mean, definitely that like my past has helped make me the writer that I am today. But so much of Retro is interesting. I could really say half influenced, right? Because so much of Retro really is just half Sophie, half me. Like I couldn't just sit and write a chapter of Retro by myself. It wouldn't exist. It is literally only existing half her, half me, because she'll change things. I'll change things of hers. It's like this. It's just like perfect, like right in the middle of us. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, a lot of things from like screenwriting background, bringing in cinematic elements, writing every single scene, or every scene, every chapter as if it's a scene. and thinking of it as a movie. So when you feel like you watched it, and that's kind of the only way that I feel like we know how to write, because
that's why it goes. When you were saying like we go from one scene at the beginning and then we go back, and then that's because in our brain was a TV show. You know, we had it really clear as a TV show how it will be.
Yeah.
So that's why we decided to tell the story that way.
So Sofia, your background is screenwriting and screenplays. Is that correct? In addition to authoring books.
And other things in entertainment, production, and casting. It was a mix of things, but storytelling.
Okay, so Sofia, what your influence in retro, is there an area of speciality that you prefer doing, like the action sequences, the drama?
Yeah. I have really clear. Yeah, my thing is first character development. I have a lot of fun developing the characters like Mimi and Darnell and Luna, and I love to joke around a lot. So I love to put some comedy, because actually in the past we wrote comedy. So we really like that. And the other thing is the thriller part. I'm addicted to thrillers.
Yeah, she's really big on thrillers.
Addicted to twists and turns and plot, because in Spain, I'm from Spain, and I feel like the thriller in Spain is pretty insane. Like we really like every 3 seconds there's a new twist, and so I was like, okay, let's bring that here.
And it's very quick paced. About retro is.
Yeah.
So based upon it, that we've established it's a very quick paced book.
Yeah.
Is there an age or I guess a background that you think retro would most appropriately speak to that might otherwise not be reading for those reluctant readers? Is there somebody that you wrote it for?
Yeah, we wrote it. I mean, I know I wrote it for like my past self. Like what would have gotten me to read the book? And Sophie too. Like what would have
happened is that as soon as hormones came, I stopped to read. That's how it happened. Yeah. I was a reader when I was a kid. I love it. And then around, I would say 13, maybe one summer, and I stopped to read. And and then I took it back in college, more or less. Yeah. And it's like, you know what? I feel like if I would have retro, like fast paced, like I would have read more.
Yeah, so. Me too. And for me, it was like, I just ran away from books. I was like, oh, books, that's my dad's thing. My dad's old. That's bad. It's just, like really bad. I'm like 10, So I'm like, run away. And then at one point I was like 13, 14. I was like, this Kurt Vonnegut's smart. And it just developed from there. And I had great teachers that gave me great books. 1984. I mean, just all these. Yeah. So I started there. And then I found my way back to YA. Because I was like, wait. Because I was making all these movies and they were really, really sucked. So I was like, hey, Dad, can you help me with the story? And then I ended up writing with him and learning all of that.
No, something I want to say, when I was a teenager, of course I read, but it was the books that the teachers gave me, or I needed to do a paper. That's what I think is really important for us, that this book was a book that teachers could like.
Yeah.
And it's fun because speaking about the books that teachers might give kids, generally speaking, they're not books that kids want to read, or that are interesting or relevant to modern kids.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah. And that was some.
They're classics and they're great books, but they aren't books that they want to read.
Yeah.
I remember reading Shakespeare at 14 and be like, okay, what about shopping?
I want to read Shakespeare now. I wish I had the time to read more of it now. Back then, maybe there could have been better things for me. I mean, you need the mix, right?
You need the mix.
You need the mix.
You need to understand literature to understand why we are nowadays where we are.
Exactly.
You have to know the classics in order to kind of build upon it. Yeah. And that's the interesting part of it, isn't it?
But that's what we think is a good mix. And we did retro thinking too, that if teachers give it to the kids or they talk about it, they could do a retro day or retro challenge in schools, because we think that it opens that possibility the way it's written.
I was going to touch on that, but I didn't want to give away too much of the plot. The retro challenge. So can you mention and talk about what that is in the book? And do you think it would really work in real life?
Yeah. Okay, so pretty much I'll give you like a little pitch of the book. So what happens is there's a really bad cyberbullying incident that happens at a high school. So Limbo comes in, kind of like TikTok or Instagram, comes in and goes, okay, we're going to make this right. We're going to do a challenge for 1 year, for the rest of the school year. If you can make it without your smart devices, then you'll get a full ride scholarship to whatever school you want. And now it's fun.
That's good.
All of these students are like, okay, let's do this. You're wearing vintage clothes, you're driving in, awesome muscle cars from the 80s, living life like you're, fall in love like you're living in a movie, right? But then then students start to go missing, and you have to realize, wait, there's someone sabotaging this challenge, and if Luna and her friends don't figure it out, then maybe they're next. So the whole point with the retro challenge was like, yeah, we wanted to ask those questions, and
we asked to ourselves our question, like, can we be without technology?
Can we do it? I mean, that's part of why it started. Like, can we really do it? And yeah, we think it would be really fun to do. And
I think one day, I think the kids.
One day, 2 days, a weekend.
A weekend.
Talk about your weekend. Because, like, here's the thing. If you're going retro just by yourself, it's really lame. You know, but if you're doing it with other people, wait, the mall is cool again. Like, that's fun, you know, but if it's just by yourself, you're just disconnected.
Yeah, go to a cave. That's it.
So it's got to work in a group kind of way. And that's why we chose to do it the way we did in the book.
I mean, personally, when I was doing it, I thought it would, when it was first initiated, I was like, oh, that's kind of silly. Kids wouldn't dig it. But as you said, as the group think and as the friends kind of latched on, started to role play, we're closed back in the day, then it made sense. And you're like, okay, I can get it. And then you got the kind of the heels, got the bad guys, the group of the bad guys, the name escapes me. And the bad guys is such a bad. What was their term again?
The Goldens?
Yeah, the Goldens. Yeah. That was neat because the Goldens are such a timeless kind of organization or trope, because it could be it could be Grease, like back from the 1970s, or it could be Cobra Kai today or something else. Where it's like, okay,
exactly,
group, and they've got threads that bond them together. They don't see themselves as too evil.
No,
they're not nice.
No, they're not nice, but we wanted to make sure they were three-dimensional, right? Like, we didn't want them to just be these bad guys, because at the end of the day, in a YA book, we don't believe that kids or teenagers or young people are bad. You know, we think that
there's something behind.
Yeah, you can be bad when you're 18, but before that, you're still figuring out who you are. So we give that benefit of the doubt, and I think that's important for us. So that's why, a lot of these characters are flawed, but then they grow and you learn about them, they become 3D, and
and they're redeemable. That's one thing I liked about it, is that the bad guys, and when you said that some of the characters were in peril, they would go missing during the challenge. It's important to point out, if you're watching this, it's not a metaphorical missing, like they're just around the corner. They're missing. No one can find them.
Yeah. MIA. They're just, so, it's like they've been kidnapped. So, and you know, in the book, we try to misdirect, and you don't know who's behind it. You know, you don't know, or who has something to do with it. Maybe you start to smell what's going on, right? But you don't know the whole story. And you find out at the end. You do find out.
Very true. So I'm a middle school substitute teacher. I teach a lot of ELA. Do you think the content is a little too heavy for, like, I'll say a 13-year-old? Is it too heavy for them?
We think 13 is right about the entry point. We think that 7th grade, can all handle it. But as far as a teacher putting it in the student's hands, we think that 8th grade is a great starting point, all the way to high school up.
Nice, very good. And it's nice. It's a very real book, and because it presents slices of every dimension you would encounter in real life. I guess are there resources or things that you guys have developed as authors to say, if you have more questions about X or Y, maybe check that out, and maybe that's something for another book or a sheet. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a really good point to try to put in those resources and help out. In retro itself, we don't have a lot of that. And what we wanted to do is kind of make it seem really approachable, to the point of, if you're reading this book, you feel like, it's not an issue-based book. It's a book that's fun, that touches on important issues. And we wanted to really make that differentiation for ourselves. So everybody can primarily enjoy it as entertainment, because we wrote this in the pandemic, and we came home every day and we're like, let's watch this movie. And we're like, wait, no, that makes us sad. Let's read this book. No, that's too dark. And we just watched, like, Schitt's Creek and, like, Friends. And we were like, okay, well, maybe if everyone else is feeling like we are, and we want to give people a thriller, let's give it to them in the Wednesday style, right? Let's give it to them in this, like, kind of multi-genre, fun, addicting thing. You know,
and it's neat because you guys wrote this during the height of the pandemic. Stranger Things was popular, but it hadn't really blown up yet. It was kind of popular, but it wasn't a phenomena of sorts. And that's neat that you phrase it like that, because the book is very approachable. Please go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it has a lot of those vibes, like Riverdale vibes.
Yeah, they are comparing a lot with Riverdale, our book, the vibes.
Yeah.
So
And
we like that.
we had to put the tropey, guilty pleasure stuff in there too.
Yeah.
You know, some of the drama, some of the lies, the backstabbing, some of the secrets. You know, it's there.
It's to have fun, right? Like what we say is like actually we say like fun guilty pleasure thriller.
Fun guilty pleasure.
That's what it is.
And it even like I'm obviously much older than a middle school and high school kid, but this is a book that even I would say my wife would latch onto because it's a guilty pleasure type thing. And I don't mean that in a way to say it's disposable, just that it is very, it's happy, but there are periods of realism where it's like, okay, there's some peril here.
Yeah.
And let's do that. Could you see adults reading this book also for those that kind of want a guilty pleasure?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think that every adult that likes YA is looking for the guilty pleasure. I think if you want something serious, you just buy adult. You go to YA looking for something like that. Your tropes, your guilty pleasure, your fun. And it's like, you want that, you have it.
Yeah,
Here it is.
You really do. And I'm like, I want to read YA. I'm like, I want to read YA. Like,
yeah.
I want that, you know, it's become like a really genre of like, of more than just like an age group, but like really a genre of what are those tropes, and you want those things. I know I do. So we wanted to write something that played in the tropes, but like the good version of the word trope, not the negative version of the word trope.
And for me, I feel like because I'm from Spain, the high schools in Spain are really different than the high schools in America. So I always say like the American movies or the American TV shows, the American books. So when I was writing retro, I wanted to have fun with the things that I always love, like the colors of the jackets they use. You know, like,
contrasting neon colors.
Yeah, all that things for me were really fun because it's like, oh, now I'm living in America, my American dream, and I didn't go to high school in America, but I'm going to do it now.
I went to high school when the fashion in retro, the fashion that the retro kids wear, the retro group, that was the style. So you guys described it actually very accurately. It's kind of like a neon glow.
I dug back into my 90s, my 90s baby pictures for sure for that one.
That is true.
My mullets and my nice, you know, light up shoes. I had it all.
And actually, it's a fashion that is coming back. It came back since a couple of years ago. We see it in H&M or Zara or Urban Outfitters, and we're like, okay.
Yeah, and we saw retros like this was a prime time for this book because it's like we were in Urban Outfitters and we saw a Drake album on vinyl, and we're like, you can buy Drake on vinyl or you can buy Drake on cassette. They have a cassette of Drake. I'm like, okay, this retro thing is the retro thing's coming back.
I draw the line at cassettes. I would still buy the LP, but cassettes were such a poor quality. That was it.
Yeah, that's because you know how bad they were. I do too.
We realize them.
Hang on, I still have one. I used to teach ESL, and in doing so, I had to have props here. I do have it. Yeah. If you're watching this is a cassette, guys. Okay. Back in the day, this is what you had. And if this got twisted out, it was all broken and horrible.
Yeah, you got to use the pen to fix it.
So in closing, retro, is there anything that, I guess, what's your closing pitch? If you meet like a middle school reluctant reader or a high school reluctant reader, how would you introduce and say retro is a book that you need to read? What's your pitch?
I would say that if you want to feel like you've, I don't know, gone back in time, feel like you were living in an old movie, feel like you're having just a great time in this retro world, do it, get this book, read this book that's going to hook you in, that you can read in one day if you want, that has a playlist for every single song. Every single chapter is like a playlist. And there's also a QR code inside the book that leads to Spotify, YouTube, all that stuff. So you can just listen while you read. If you want something that's just a guilty pleasure that you can just devour, I mean, go get retro. Go get retro. And then give it to your friends.
and I mean, I'll postscript that by saying it's got enough action and mystery to where middle school dudes can read it, and it's not all love and romance and sappy stuff that they are.
There's a car race. There is a fire. There is a lot of stuff.
It's written by a girl and a guy. You know, we both have our impact.
But a girl that loves cars.
Also, feel free to check us out on social media. We're at Sophie and Jarrod, SOFIAND JARROD. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok. We're always making these fun videos behind the scenes, like author life videos.
We give giveaways, a lot of giveaways.
Lots of giveaways. We also put like readers inside the books. Like inside of Retro, there's actually 5 names that are of readers that hit us up on social media because we did a little contest and we put them in the book. So it's like we're always interactive. If you DM us, we're probably going to respond to you 9 times out of 10. So yeah, check out our social media. You guys will have fun with it.
I'll say. And once again, the profile on social is what?
It's at Sophie and Jarrod.